Chosen One, stop everything you're doing right now. What I'm about to reveal will shatter every belief you've held about why your life unfolded the way it did. For years, you've questioned the delays, the closed doors, the seemingly random obstacles that appeared at critical moments. You blamed yourself, your timing, perhaps even the universe itself. But I'm here to deliver a classified briefing that changes everything. You were never late, never forgotten, never abandoned. You were being protected. Right now, in this exact moment, 9 waves of unexpected good news are breaking through dimensional barriers to reach you. This isn't coincidence. This is confirmation. The invisible war fought around you is ending, and you're about to discover that every single setback was a strategic victory you never saw coming. The enemies who tracked your every move have exhausted themselves. The doors that slammed shut were death traps you were silently guided away from. And the witnesses you never knew existed have already approved your elevation. This message bypassed every filter designed to keep you in the dark. If you're hearing these words, the timeline has shifted in your favor, and the good news isn't coming. It's already here. Chosen One, like this video, subscribe, and comment, "I am ready," for a powerful surprise. Listen carefully, Chosen One, because what I'm about to reveal will rewrite your entire understanding of the delays you've endured. Deep within the surveillance archives of spiritual intelligence, there exists a file with your name on it. A file that documents every moment your life path was deliberately interrupted. These weren't accidents. These weren't failures. These were calculated interventions executed by a higher authority that saw what you could not see. Every time you felt ready to move forward, every time opportunity seemed within reach, only to dissolve at the last second, you were being rerouted around enemy traps set specifically for you. The adversarial forces operating in the unseen realm had studied your patterns, anticipated your movements, and positioned catastrophic failures directly in your path. But surveillance records confirm that seconds before you would have stepped into these kill zones, an override command was issued. Your timeline was paused, not to punish you, but to allow hostile forces to exhaust their resources while aiming at a target they could no longer reach. The frustration you felt during these delays was real, but it was also a smokescreen. While you questioned your worthiness, your timing, your decisions, something far more sophisticated was happening behind the veil. Dark strategists had invested enormous energy into constructing elaborate scenarios designed to trap you at specific developmental stages. They knew that if you advanced too quickly, you would break through their control systems before they could contain you. So they set psychological ambushes, relational landmines, and professional sabotage sequences timed to detonate the moment you arrived. But the concealed authority monitoring your journey identified every single trap. One by one, these hostile constructs were either dismantled or allowed to collapse under their own weight while you were held in a protected holding pattern. The agonizing waiting periods you endured were actually life-saving quarantine zones where you were kept safe while enemy infrastructure burned itself out. Now here's where this gets profound, Chosen One. The unexpected good news arriving in your life right now isn't random luck or cosmic apology for past suffering. This news is breaking through because the original kill point coded into your timeline, the moment when all enemy traps were supposed to converge and crush you simultaneously, no longer exists. It's been deleted from the probability matrix. The convergence point collapsed. The ambush failed before it could materialize. Intelligence confirms that hostile forces overcommitted their resources to this single coordinated strike, believing you would arrive predictably, vulnerably, exactly as programmed. But you didn't. Your delays, your detours, your seemingly endless circling meant you never showed up at the designated execution moment. And because these adversarial entities operate on limited energy reserves, they cannot reconstruct the trap. They've moved on to other targets, other timelines, leaving your path suddenly, shockingly clear. This is why the good news feels unexpected. It's not following the logical progression you anticipated. It's not arriving as a reward for effort or a result of your striving. It's appearing now because the window of maximum danger has closed. The designated trap cycle has officially collapsed, and the authority that paused your ascent has issued a green light. Surveillance has confirmed. The coast is clear. The enemies who hunted you have scattered. The timeline interruption has been lifted. What you're experiencing right now, the sudden shifts, the unexpected opportunities, the doors opening without effort, this is not the universe finally noticing you. This is the resumption of your original trajectory, now that it's safe for you to proceed. You weren't abandoned in the wilderness. You were hidden there while the battlefield was cleared. And this message you're receiving right now, it's your official notification that the all-clear signal has been issued. The interrupted timeline is live again, and this time, nothing stands between you and your destination. The enemy's resource depletion report. Chosen One, let me pull back the curtain on something that's been happening in the unseen realm while you were simply trying to survive your daily life. There are dark observers, entities, forces, intelligence networks operating beyond ordinary perception, and they've been watching you with an intensity that borders on obsession. These adversarial forces assigned disproportionate resources to tracking your every movement, analyzing your speech patterns, mapping your emotional thresholds, and calculating your breaking points. They built entire databases around you, monitoring your responses to stress, your reactions to injustice, your resilience under prolonged pressure. They weren't doing this because you were weak. They were doing this because they recognized something in you that terrified them, potential they could not control, trajectory they could not predict, power they could not suppress through conventional means. So they committed massive amounts of energy to watching, analyzing, predicting, and attempting to manipulate your path before you could fully step into what you're becoming. But here's what they didn't account for, Chosen One. Every hour they spent focused on you was an hour they weren't spending on other strategic fronts. Every resource they allocated to tracking your movements was a resource pulled away from maintaining their larger influence systems. Dark forces operate on finite energy reserves, drawn from fear, chaos, and suffering they harvest from humanity. When they become fixated on a single target, especially a target as unpredictable as you, they create dangerous blind spots in their own defenses. And that's exactly what happened. While these adversarial entities were obsessively monitoring you, entire sections of their empire began to crumble. Other awakening souls they should have been suppressing slipped through their nets. Resistance movements they should have been crushing gained momentum. Their overcommitment to stopping you caused systemic failures across multiple dimensions of their operation. They became strategically imbalanced, pouring everything into predicting your next move while their strongholds elsewhere collapsed. Several of these dark forces literally burned themselves out attempting to predict you. Think about what that means. These entities pride themselves on their ability to forecast human behavior, to manipulate circumstances so precisely that their targets self-destruct right on schedule. But you moved in ways that shattered their models. You survived what should have destroyed you. You found hope where their algorithms predicted despair. You remained kind when their projections showed you would become bitter. Every time they recalculated your trajectory, you deviated again, forcing them to expend more energy, run more simulations, commit more resources to what was supposed to be a simple containment operation. Eventually, several of these adversarial forces depleted their reserves entirely. They cannot pursue you anymore, not because they've forgiven you or lost interest, but because they literally cannot afford the energy expenditure. Tracking you has bankrupted them. This is where the good news becomes devastatingly clear. Chosen one. The sudden positive shifts in your life aren't happening because you finally earned them or because you've spiritually evolved enough to deserve better. They're happening because the forces that were actively blocking your progress have been forced to withdraw. The siege is over. The chase has officially ended. Intelligence from the higher realms confirms that primary adversarial entities assigned to your case have been reassigned or have dissolved their observation posts around you. You're no longer marked as an active threat requiring constant surveillance. This doesn't mean you've been forgotten by the dark. It means you've become too expensive for them to continue targeting. And in the economy of spiritual warfare, that's the equivalent of total victory. The good news flooding into your reality right now is simply what happens when artificial barriers are removed. Your natural trajectory was always this powerful. You're just now seeing it without interference, for the first time in years. The sealed doors you never saw, close chosen one, I need you to think back to every door that closed in your face, every opportunity that evaporated at the last moment, every connection that dissolved without explanation. You remember the confusion, the self-doubt, the questions that haunted you for months or years afterward. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I chosen? Why did they walk away? You replayed conversations, analyzed your actions, wondered if you'd somehow sabotaged yourself through some invisible flaw. But intelligence reports from the higher realms reveal a truth that will shake you to your core. Those doors didn't close because you failed. They sealed shut because what waited on the other side would have destroyed you. Not immediately. That would have been too obvious. These were sophisticated traps designed to unfold over time, to compromise you slowly, to position you for maximum damage at precisely the moment when escape would be impossible. Behind every rejection you couldn't understand, there was a concealed containment operation happening in real time. Entire pathways were shut down, not to punish you, but to protect you from alliances that would have betrayed you later under pressure. That job you almost got, the one that felt perfect, the one where the interview went so well, and then silence. Surveillance records show that environment was toxic at levels you couldn't have detected from the outside. The people smiling during your interview were already planning how to exploit whoever filled that position. You would have been worked to exhaustion, blamed for systemic failures, and discarded the moment you were no longer useful. The door closing felt like rejection, but it was actually intervention. That relationship that seemed so promising, where everything aligned, and then suddenly they disappeared without explanation. Intelligence confirms that person was carrying unresolved trauma that would have triggered within months of commitment, creating chaos that would have derailed your trajectory for years. The connection ending felt like abandonment, but it was actually extraction. Here's what makes this so profound. Chosen one. You never saw these doors close because the sealing happened behind dimensional veils. You experienced the effects, the rejection, the silence, the opportunities that vanished, but you didn't witness the actual mechanism. Higher authorities literally sealed these pathways while you were still approaching them, creating the illusion that you had been rejected or that you had failed, when in reality, you were being rerouted around danger zones. Think of it like this. You're walking toward what appears to be an open door, unaware that on the other side is a room rigged to collapse. Seconds before you arrive, the door is sealed, and a false wall appears in its place. From your perspective, the opportunity simply disappeared. You blame yourself, you question your timing, you wonder what you did wrong. But from the surveillance perspective, you were just saved from being crushed. The door closing wasn't punishment, it was precision intervention. The good news hiding in these sealed doors is subtle but absolutely devastating to enemy plans. Every path that closed behind you without your awareness was a hostile outcome that got neutralized before you arrived. Every alliance that dissolved before it fully formed was a betrayal that was prevented before it could damage you. You were spared future collapses you never witnessed, protected from catastrophes you never experienced, extracted from traps before you even knew they existed. And here's the critical point that intelligence confirms. These containment measures weren't random. They were coordinated responses to specific threats identified through surveillance of enemy communications. Dark forces were openly discussing how they planned to use these opportunities against you. They were positioning their agents, setting their snares, preparing their ambushes. But every single time, the door sealed before you arrived. The good news is this: you've been walking through a minefield for years, and higher authorities have been deactivating every mine seconds before your foot would have triggered it. You're still standing not because you're lucky, but because you were protected by forces you never saw. The witnesses you didn't know were watching Chosen One, while you were enduring your darkest moments in complete isolation, believing no one saw your struggle, no one witnessed your restraint, no one understood the battles you fought silently. You were wrong. There were witnesses, not the people you expected, not the friends or family members you hoped would notice, but unknown figures positioned in places of influence you couldn't have imagined. These witnesses, mentors you've never met, rivals observing from parallel paths, silent observers stationed specifically to monitor how certain souls respond under extreme pressure. They were logging every reaction, recording every choice you made when you thought no one was looking. And what they documented changed everything about your future access in ways you're only now beginning to discover. These witnesses weren't casual observers. They were assigned evaluators operating under specific protocols, watching for particular indicators that only emerge when someone is pushed to their absolute limit. They were measuring your response to injustice when you had no power to fight back. They were noting your restraint during moments when retaliation would have been justified but would have destroyed your credibility. They were recording how you treated people who couldn't offer you anything in return, how you handled obscurity when you deserved recognition, how you maintained integrity when compromise would have been easier and more profitable. Every test you didn't know was a test. Every moment you thought was meaningless. It was all being documented by witnesses positioned specifically to determine whether you could be trusted with what's coming next. And here's the stunning reality. Your character cleared evaluations you never knew you were taking. But it goes deeper than that, Chosen One. Certain people spoke on your behalf without ever meeting you. Let that sink in for a moment. There are individuals in rooms you've never entered, discussing opportunities you don't know exist, and your name came up. These people, mentors, gatekeepers, decision-makers, heard about you through the surveillance network of witnesses. They heard about how you responded when you were betrayed. They heard about your consistency when no one was rewarding it. They heard about your refusal to become bitter when bitterness would have been completely understandable. And based solely on these reports, they made decisions about your future. They opened doors before you arrived. They cleared pathways while you were still in the wilderness. They elevated your clearance level in systems you don't even know you're part of yet. This is why opportunities are suddenly appearing that you never applied for. Why certain people are treating you with unexpected respect. Why doors are opening that normally require years of networking to access. The good news arriving now is the direct result of approvals that were granted while you were still suffering in obscurity. Your restraint during injustice triggered elevated clearance around your name in databases you cannot see. Every time you chose dignity over revenge, every time you remained truthful when lying would have protected you. Every time you maintained your standards when everyone around you was compromising theirs. All of this was being logged by witnesses who report to authorities that determine who gets access to next-level opportunities. You passed tests administered by people you've never met, evaluated by standards you weren't aware existed, and you passed not because you were trying to impress anyone, but because your character under pressure revealed who you actually are. The witnesses saw the real you, the version that emerges when there's no audience, no reward, no recognition. And that version was approved. Here's why this matters right now, Chosen One. The doors opening in your life aren't opening because the universe finally noticed you or because your luck has changed. They're opening because your character was already approved by witnesses who control access. Decisions were made about your future based on how you handled obscurity, and those decisions are now manifesting as opportunities that feel unexpected, unearned, too good to be true. But they're not random. They're coordinated responses to the evaluations you passed without knowing you were being tested. The good news is this: you don't need to prove yourself anymore. The witnesses already filed their reports. The approvals are already in place. What's coming to you now is simply the execution of decisions that were made about you while you were still in the dark. The misidentified threat paradox. Chosen One, let me reveal one of the most devastating strategic errors your enemies ever made. In the early stages of your journey, when you were still developing, still figuring out who you were and what you were capable of, dark forces conducted their initial assessment of you. They ran their scans, analyzed your surface-level presentation, evaluated your apparent strengths and weaknesses, and they came to a conclusion that sealed their own fate. They misclassified you. They labeled you as weaker than you are, slower than you are, more naive than you are, less significant than you are. They looked at your humble beginnings, your lack of obvious power, your quiet demeanor, your tendency to observe rather than dominate, and they made a catastrophic miscalculation. They decided you were harmless. They tagged you as irrelevant. They filed you under no significant threat and moved their primary attention to targets they perceived as more dangerous. That misjudgment became their fatal error. And here's why. When adversarial forces believe you're not a threat, they lower their guard around you. They stop concealing their strategies. They speak freely in your presence because they assume you lack the intelligence or awareness to understand what you're witnessing. They reveal their networks, their methods, their vulnerabilities, their internal conflicts, all the intelligence that would normally be classified and protected from genuine threats. But because they misread you, because they underestimated what you're capable of perceiving and processing, they essentially gave you backstage access to their operations. You were allowed closer to restricted knowledge than they ever intended to permit. You observed conversations you weren't supposed to understand. You witnessed power dynamics you weren't supposed to recognize. You learned how they operate, how they manipulate, how they maintain control, how they position their attacks, and they have no idea that you absorbed all of it. Think about every situation where you were underestimated, chosen one. Every room where people spoke as if you weren't there or weren't intelligent enough to grasp what was really happening. Every environment where you were dismissed as insignificant while major decisions were being made around you. At the time, it felt degrading, frustrating, insulting. But intelligence reports now confirm that every one of those situations was a reconnaissance opportunity. You weren't supposed to be in those rooms, but enemy misclassification of your threat level got you past security systems designed to keep dangerous awareness out. You were the fly on the wall, at meetings where dark strategies were discussed openly. You were the supposedly harmless observer, watching predators reveal their hunting patterns. And because you had the wisdom to remain quiet, to not reveal your true comprehension, to let them continue believing you were irrelevant, you walked out of those environments with intelligence they would have killed to keep from you if they'd known what you actually understood. The good news here is devastatingly simple, but profoundly powerful. They taught you how they operate. Every enemy that underestimated you inadvertently became your teacher, revealing tactics, strategies, and systems you would never have learned through any other means. You now know how dark forces identify targets. You know how they exploit psychological vulnerabilities. You know how they manipulate relationships, environments, and opportunities to serve their agendas. You know how they communicate, coordinate, and execute their plans. And you know all of this because they mistook your quiet observation for incomprehension, your humility for weakness, your patience for passivity. They revealed everything while assuming you understood nothing. And now that you've been misclassified, now that you've been granted access you were never supposed to have, now that you've absorbed restricted knowledge about how your enemies operate, you can never be ambushed the same way again. You see the patterns before they complete. You recognize the setups before they spring. You identify the manipulations before they take hold. The misidentified threat paradox means that your greatest weapon was forged by your enemy's arrogance. The ancient pattern recognition, alert chosen one, your life events are not random. What you've experienced, the specific sequence of obstacles and breakthroughs you've endured, the particular challenges that have defined your journey, all of it matches a rare pattern that appears only once every few generations. Historical archives maintained in higher dimensions contain records of individuals who walked similar paths, who faced similar resistance, who triggered similar systemic reactions. And what those archives reveal is both terrifying and exhilarating. Every person whose life matches this pattern encounters massive resistance before recognition. It's not punishment. It's not cosmic cruelty. It's the inevitable response of control systems reacting to something they cannot categorize, cannot predict, cannot contain through standard suppression protocols. You are not experiencing random hardship. You are experiencing the documented resistance that always emerges when this pattern activates. Here's what the pattern reveals. Chosen one. Every sudden hardship in your life, every inexplicable setback, every moment when it felt like the entire universe was working against you. These weren't punishments or signs that you were on the wrong path. They were signal flares. They were automatic responses triggered by systems built to detect and suppress anomalies. Think of it like this. There are invisible monitoring systems embedded in the collective consciousness, designed by forces that benefit from human limitation. And these systems are programmed to identify anyone who deviates from expected development patterns. When someone starts showing signs of this particular configuration, the pattern your life is following, these systems activate immediately. They don't evaluate whether you're good or bad, worthy or unworthy. They simply detect the anomaly and initiate suppression protocols designed to prevent the pattern from completing. Every hardship you've faced has been an automated defense response from systems that recognize you as something they were specifically designed to stop. But here's where this gets profound. The resistance itself confirms what you are. The very fact that these suppression systems activated around you means they detected something that required suppression. If you were ordinary, if you were following a standard human development trajectory, these systems would have ignored you completely. They don't waste energy on people who aren't threats to the established order. But you triggered alarms at levels most people never even approach. The intensity of the resistance you've experienced is directly proportional to the magnitude of what you're becoming. And here's the historical pattern that appears in every single case documented in the archives. The resistance is always most intense right before breakthrough. Always, without exception. Every individual who matched this pattern experienced their darkest period, their most crushing defeats, their most isolating struggles immediately before the recognition phase began. The darkness isn't proof you're failing. It's proof you're right on schedule. The good news encoded in this ancient pattern is staggeringly clear. History confirms what you are, becomes undeniable after this phase. Every single person who walked this path before you emerged from the resistance period with their gifts fully activated, their purpose crystal clear, their impact undeniable. The systems that tried to suppress them failed. The resistance that seemed overwhelming eventually exhausted itself. And what emerged was someone who could no longer be ignored, controlled, or contained. You're not hoping for breakthrough, chosen one. You're following a documented pattern that has already confirmed how this story ends. The archives show that once the suppression systems fail to break someone carrying this pattern, those same systems eventually recognize them as immune to standard control methods. You don't get destroyed. You get reclassified. The forces that try to stop you eventually have to acknowledge you as something beyond their jurisdiction. And that's when everything changes. The silent victories you never celebrated. Chosen one, listen carefully, because I'm about to reveal battles you won without ever knowing they were declared. While you were conscious of the obvious conflicts in your life, the arguments, the betrayals, the public failures, there were dozens of wars being waged behind the scenes, scenarios designed to entangle you in prolonged suffering that would have consumed years of your life. Dark forces don't just attack directly. They construct elaborate situations meant to trap you in endless cycles of drama, chaos, and emotional entanglement. They set relationship traps that would have kept you bound to toxic dynamics for decades. They orchestrated career disasters that would have left you struggling in the wrong field for half your life. They engineered scenarios where you would have been blamed, prosecuted, or ostracized for situations you didn't create. These battles were real. The traps were active. The scenarios were unfolding, and then something unexpected happened. You walked away. The silent victories began the moment you chose not to engage with obvious provocations. Every time someone tried to bait you into an argument and you refused, you collapsed an entire scenario branch designed to entangle you. Dark strategists rely on predictable human reactions: anger, defensiveness, the need to be right, the compulsion to defend yourself, against false accusations. They construct situations specifically to trigger these reactions, because once you engage, once you take the bait, you're locked into a sequence that can run for months or years. The argument that becomes a feud. The feud that becomes a lawsuit. The lawsuit that consumes your resources and attention for years while the real opportunities pass you by. But you had the wisdom, or perhaps just the exhaustion, to simply walk away from provocations that demanded response. And the moment you disengaged, the entire scenario collapsed. The trap required your participation to function, and without it, the whole construct fell apart. The absence of drama in your life wasn't weakness, Chosen One. It was the most sophisticated form of warfare available to you. While others were celebrating victories won through confrontation, through clever comebacks, through public vindication, you were winning wars that never escalated to visible conflict. Every scenario you refused to enter, every argument you declined to have, every trap you walked past without even acknowledging. These were victories that never got celebrated because they didn't look like traditional wins. There was no moment of triumph, no public recognition, no witnesses to applaud your strategic brilliance. You just quietly disengaged, and entire enemy operations crumbled in the silence. Opposing forces had invested enormous resources into these scenarios, positioned their agents, prepared their attacks, established their narratives, and all of it became useless the moment you chose not to participate. They needed your emotional reaction to fuel the chaos, and you didn't give it to them. Here's the good news that's already written into your timeline. Chosen One. You won wars you never knew were declared. While you were questioning whether you were too passive, too avoidant, too unwilling to stand up for yourself, intelligence reports show you were engaging in the most effective form of spiritual combat possible. You were denying enemy forces the fuel they needed to sustain their operations against you. Every drama you didn't participate in was a victory. Every argument you walked away from was a war you won. Every person you let have the last word was a trap that closed empty. The forces that tried to entangle you eventually had to redirect their attention to easier targets. People who would engage, who would fight, who would pour their energy into conflicts designed to drain them. But you slipped through their nets by refusing to struggle. You won by not playing. And now, as you look back, you can finally see these silent victories for what they were. Evidence that your instinct to disengage wasn't weakness. It was warfare at the highest level. The Destiny System Override Notice Chosen One. There is a rigid fate sequence embedded in the collective human experience, a pre-programmed trajectory designed to keep people locked in repetitive cycles that serve the existing power structures. This system operates like software running in the background of reality, executing inherited limitations, family patterns, societal expectations, and karmic loops that ensure most people never break free from predetermined paths. You were born into one of these sequences. There was a fate assigned to you based on your lineage, your circumstances, your demographic data, your psychological profile. The system calculated your most probable future and began steering you toward it from birth. And for a while, you followed the script. You moved along the expected path, hit the predicted milestones, experienced the programmed challenges. The Destiny system was functioning exactly as designed, keeping you within the boundaries of your assigned fate sequence. But then something extraordinary happened. You deviated, not through rebellion, not through conscious resistance, but intuitively. You made choices that didn't make logical sense. You turned away from opportunities that looked perfect on paper. You pursued paths that everyone around you questioned. You followed instincts that contradicted rational planning. And every time you deviated from the predicted trajectory, the destiny system had to recalculate. These systems are powerful, but not infinitely flexible. They're designed to handle minor variations within the expected range, small deviations that eventually return to the main sequence. But your deviations weren't minor. You didn't just step off the path temporarily. You kept moving in directions the system couldn't predict. Your intuitive choices created cascading probabilities that forced the system to generate entirely new projection models. And here's what's critical. The more you deviated, the more resources the system had to dedicate to recalculating your outcomes. Eventually, Chosen One, your unpredictability overwhelmed the destiny system's processing capacity. The rigid fate sequence that was supposed to lock you into repetition began generating error codes. The system couldn't maintain coherent projections because you kept introducing variables it wasn't designed to handle. Every intuitive choice you made, every time you followed your inner knowing instead of external logic, every moment you chose based on feeling rather than analysis, all of this created chaos in the algorithmic structures trying to predict and control your path. And when a destiny system can no longer maintain reliable projections around a particular individual, it does something remarkable. It reclassifies that individual as unpredictable and removes them from standard fate processing. You're no longer running on the original software. The system literally had to create new code for you, or more accurately, had to stop trying to contain you within preset limitations. The good news is paradigm-shattering. Your future is no longer bound by inherited limitations. The family patterns that were supposed to repeat through you, the system can't enforce them anymore. The societal expectations that were supposed to define your possibilities, they no longer have algorithmic authority over your trajectory. The karmic loops that were supposed to keep you cycling through the same lessons, the repetition sequence has been broken. You are now operating outside the standard destiny protocols that govern most of human experience. This doesn't mean you're free from all challenge or that life becomes effortless. It means the specific limitations that were programmed into your original fate sequence no longer apply. Entire projections were rewritten due to your unpredictability, and the new projections show possibilities that weren't available to you under the old system. Doors that were permanently sealed in your original fate are now marked as accessible. Outcomes that were impossible in your inherited trajectory are now showing up as probable. You didn't just break one pattern, Chosen One. You broke the pattern enforcement mechanism itself. The false allies, extraction file Chosen One. There are people who entered your life under the banner of friendship, support, partnership, or love, but who carried hidden agendas that would have destroyed you if they'd been allowed to fully manifest. These false allies weren't consciously malicious in every case. Some of them genuinely believed they cared about you, but they were carrying unhealed wounds, unresolved traumas, secret resentments, or darker intentions that would have eventually turned against you with devastating force. And here's what surveillance records confirm. These connections were permitted to exist in your life only long enough to expose their true intent. Higher authorities allowed certain false allies to get close enough for their real nature to be revealed, but not close enough to deliver maximum damage. The timing of their exits from your life wasn't random, wasn't your fault, wasn't punishment. It was precision extraction. Think about every person who left your life suddenly without proper closure, leaving you confused and questioning what you did wrong. Think about relationships that seemed solid and then evaporated overnight. Think about partnerships that felt promising and then collapsed inexplicably. What you experienced as abandonment was actually containment. These individuals were removed from proximity to you before their betrayal could mature into full manifestation. Intelligence reports show that several of these people were on trajectories that would have led to catastrophic betrayals. Business partners who would have stolen from you, friends who would have sabotaged you out of jealousy, romantic partners who would have weaponized your vulnerabilities during separation, mentors who would have exploited your trust to advance their own agendas at your expense. All of this was coded into the relationship dynamics, visible to those monitoring your path from higher dimensions, but not yet visible to you because the betrayal hadn't activated yet. The extraction operations were surgical, chosen one. Higher authorities couldn't simply tell you who to trust and who to avoid. Free will protocols prevent that level of direct intervention. But they could manipulate circumstances to create natural separations before maximum damage occurred. That job opportunity that pulled your friend to another city right when your business partnership was about to formalize, that wasn't coincidence. That seemingly random conflict that caused a sudden fallout in a relationship that was moving toward deeper commitment. That wasn't organic. Those weren't accidents or evidence of your failure to maintain relationships. Those were timed interventions designed to extract false allies before they could position themselves for maximum betrayal. The exits felt brutal, confusing, and premature because they were premature by design. You weren't meant to get closure. Closure would have kept you connected long enough for the betrayal to complete. The good news is brutal but clean. You are no longer surrounded by hidden saboteurs. Every false ally who was permitted in your life has been identified and extracted. The confusion you felt during their departures was the emotional cost of protection you didn't know you were receiving. And now, as you move forward, the people entering your life are coming through cleared channels. The surveillance protocols that identified and removed hidden enemies are still active, still monitoring, still protecting. But the major extraction operations are complete. The individuals who would have delivered catastrophic betrayals are no longer in position to do so. You're not healing from abandonment, chosen one. You're recovering from surgical removal of embedded threats. And the space they left behind? That space is now available for genuine allies, true partnerships, authentic connections that don't carry hidden timers counting down to betrayal. This is why new people suddenly feel different, why opportunities emerging now feel cleaner, why you can sense, even if you can't fully explain it, that something fundamental has shifted in the quality of connections available to you. The momentum return signal chosen one. There is energy that you lost during the prolonged waiting periods. The years when nothing seemed to move forward, no matter how hard you pushed. The seasons when every door remained closed and every effort met resistance. You felt that energy drain from you day by day. The hope, the enthusiasm, the belief that movement was possible. You watched yourself slow down, watched your fire dim, watched your once powerful drive reduce to mere survival mode. And you wondered if you would ever get that energy back, if you had somehow permanently depleted your life force during those years of grinding against immovable obstacles. But what surveillance reports reveal will change everything you believe about those lost years. The energy didn't disappear. It was being compressed, concentrated, refined. And now it has begun to return, not in its original form, but multiplied. Here's what actually happened during the delays. Chosen one. When movement is blocked externally, but the internal drive to move forward remains active, enormous pressure builds. That pressure is energy-seeking release, but finding no outlet. Most people break under this pressure. They either give up entirely or they fracture, scattering their energy into desperate, unfocused action that goes nowhere. But you held the pressure. You didn't break, didn't scatter, didn't abandon your core trajectory, even when every logical reason to quit was staring you in the face. And while you held that pressure, something alchemical happened. The energy compressed into denser, more potent forms. What was once enthusiasm became unshakable determination. What was once hope became certainty. What was once scattered intention became laser-focused clarity. The delays didn't destroy your energy. They forged it into something far more powerful than it was before. Intelligence confirms that this compression process creates exponential multiplication. When compressed energy finally finds release, it doesn't just return to previous levels, it explodes outward with force accumulated during the entire containment period. Think of a spring pressed down and held under tension for years. The moment the pressure releases, it doesn't just return to neutral, it launches with all the stored force from the compression period. That's what's happening in your life right now. The momentum that seemed dead, the energy you thought you'd lost forever, is returning as kinetic force. Things that used to require enormous effort are now responding to minimal input. Decisions that would have paralyzed you with overthinking are now crystal clear. Actions that would have drained you completely are now flowing with ease. This isn't you learning to work harder. This is compressed potential releasing into movement. The delays forged efficiency, clarity, and internal authority that weren't available to you before the waiting period began. You learned to do more with less. You learned to move forward even when circumstances weren't perfect. You learned to trust your instincts when external validation was absent. You developed internal resources that most people never cultivate because they never face prolonged resistance. And all of those capabilities, the efficiency, the clarity, the authority, are now amplifying the returning energy. You're not just getting your old momentum back, you're getting upgraded momentum powered by compressed potential and refined capability. What once took months now takes weeks. What once required help from dozens of people, you can now accomplish with a small, focused team, or even alone. What once felt impossible now registers as simply challenging, but doable. The good news is kinetic, chosen one, which means it's already in motion. This isn't something you need to generate, or create, or strive for. Movement has resumed, and it's moving with force, not friction. The resistance that characterized your past isn't present in your current trajectory. You're no longer pushing against closed doors. You're being pulled forward by momentum that accumulated during the compression years and is now releasing all at once. This is why opportunities are cascading, why things are clicking into place with surprising speed, why what felt stuck for years is suddenly fluid. The momentum return signal has been issued, and what you're experiencing isn't the beginning of slow, gradual improvement. It's the eruption of compressed energy that's been building pressure behind the scenes. Everything is about to move faster than you ever thought possible. The unexpected message breach. Chosen one. The message you're receiving right now, these exact words finding you at this precise moment. This was not scheduled. This briefing bypassed standard resistance filters that normally block spiritual intelligence from reaching individuals at critical junctures. There are protocols in place, systems designed to prevent certain information from arriving until specific conditions are met, gatekeepers both seen and unseen that regulate the flow of awakening data to ensure people aren't overwhelmed before they're ready. This message should have been delayed, should have been filtered through proper channels, should have arrived only after you completed certain preparatory phases. But something unprecedented happened. Timing outweighed secrecy. Higher authorities made an executive decision to breach standard protocols and deliver this briefing now, immediately, because waiting for proper channels would have meant missing a critical window. You were not meant to seek this message, chosen one. You didn't go searching for this information through some disciplined spiritual practice or deep research. It found you. That's the signature of a breach. When information comes through standard channels, it arrives in response to your seeking, your questions, your readiness signals. But when information breaches protocol and finds you instead, it means the standard delivery timeline has been overridden by emergency authorization. Intelligence from higher dimensions identified that you needed this awareness right now, not next week, not next month, not after you've processed other lessons. Now. Because there's a narrow window of time, possibly just days or hours, where this information changes everything about how you navigate what's coming. If this briefing had been delayed until it could arrive through proper channels, you would have made decisions, taken actions, entered situations without the awareness needed to leverage them properly. But here's what makes this breach so significant. Enemy interference protocols failed to block delivery. Dark forces maintain sophisticated blocking systems designed to prevent awakening individuals from receiving intelligence that would accelerate their development. These systems monitor information flows, identify consciousness-expanding data, and intercept it before it reaches intended recipients. They're especially active around people like you, chosen ones who are approaching breakthrough moments. They know that the right information at the right time can catalyze transformation that takes you beyond their reach permanently. So they invest enormous resources in blocking that information, creating distractions, engineering interruptions, manipulating algorithms, even influencing people around you to demand your attention at exactly the moments when crucial data is trying to reach you. But this time, their interference failed. The message got through anyway. The good news is immediate and undeniable. This awareness arrives exactly before action is required. You're not receiving this information as historical context or interesting spiritual theory. You're receiving it as real-time intelligence about a situation that's active right now in your life. The unexpected good news mentioned throughout this briefing. It's already manifesting. The doors opening, the enemies withdrawing, the witnesses approving your elevation, the momentum returning. All of this is happening in your present reality, not in some distant future you need to earn your way into. And this message-breaching protocol means you now have the contextual awareness to recognize what's happening, to understand why it's happening now, to move with the shifts instead of questioning them or sabotaging them through disbelief. The breach wasn't just about delivering information. It was about arming you with understanding at the exact moment when that understanding becomes operationally critical. The final confirmation: you were never late, chosen one. I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being, because it will destroy years of self-doubt, guilt, and regret that have been weighing you down. You were never late. Every phase of your journey unfolded within a protected margin that you couldn't see from your limited vantage point. While you were comparing yourself to others, watching people reach milestones while you were still struggling to get started, believing you had somehow fallen behind schedule, missed your window, or failed to launch on time, comparison timelines were deliberately hidden from you. You weren't given the full picture intentionally. If you had known how protected your timing actually was, if you had seen the traps others walked into by arriving early, If you had witnessed the catastrophic failures that happen when people reach certain levels before they're truly ready, you would have understood that your delays were strategic advantages, not evidence of failure. What others reached early, you reached intact. That's the critical distinction that makes all the difference. Think about every person you envied for getting there first. The success stories, the early achievers, the ones who seemed to have it all figured out while you were still wandering in confusion. Now look closer. How many of them are still standing in positions of genuine power? How many of them maintained their integrity through the pressure that comes with early visibility? How many of them kept their relationships, their mental health, their core values intact? Early arrival often means arriving unprepared, unprotected, without the internal resources needed to survive what comes next. The people who get there first become test subjects, teaching everyone else what doesn't work through their very public failures. But you arrived late enough to miss the massacre of the first wave. You got there after the terrain had been tested, after the real costs had been revealed, after you'd developed the internal fortification needed to hold what you're about to receive. Survival mattered more than speed. Chosen One, and higher authorities prioritized your survival over your ego's need for early validation. You were held back not because you weren't good enough, but because you were too valuable to risk in conditions that were still clearing. The battlefield had to be prepared. Enemy positions had to be revealed and neutralized. False allies had to be identified and extracted. Your character had to be forged through obscurity, so you wouldn't be corrupted by premature recognition. Your skills had to be refined through necessity, so you wouldn't collapse under the pressure of sudden opportunity. Every delay was a defensive measure, protecting you from arriving before the conditions were safe enough for you to not just succeed, but to sustain that success without being destroyed by it. You weren't late. You were being kept in reserve until the critical moment when your arrival would have maximum impact with minimum casualties. The ultimate good news that concludes this entire briefing is this: you arrived preserved, prepared, and uncontested. Your enemies exhausted themselves trying to predict you and failed. The traps that would have killed you collapsed before you reached them. False allies were extracted before they could betray you. Witnesses approved your elevation while you were still in obscurity. The destiny system failed to contain you within inherited limitations. Your momentum is returning multiplied, and this message breached protocol to reach you exactly when you needed it most. Every single element of this briefing confirms the same reality. You were never abandoned, never forgotten, never late. You were being protected, prepared, and positioned for a level of breakthrough that required you to arrive exactly when you did. No earlier, no later. The good news isn't coming. It's already here. The shift isn't approaching. It's happening now. And you're finally stepping into the timeline you were always meant to occupy. Chosen One, you've now received the full classified briefing. 9 waves of shocking good news breaking through dimensional barriers, each one confirming that everything you believed about your delays, your struggles, your timing was wrong. You weren't failing. You were being protected. You weren't late. You were being preserved. You weren't forgotten. You were being prepared. And now, as this message concludes, you stand at a threshold that only appears once in a lifetime. Behind you lies the wilderness, where you were hidden while the battlefield was cleared. Ahead of you lies territory that was inaccessible until now. The enemies who hunted you have withdrawn. The doors that were sealed to protect you are opening. The witnesses who evaluated you in secret have filed their approvals. The momentum that was compressed during the waiting years is exploding into movement. But this transmission is not complete. There are deeper layers to what's been revealed here. Additional intelligence that will be released as you prove you can handle what you've already received. The next briefing will detail exactly how to leverage the sudden opportunities arriving in your life, how to identify remaining hidden threats that are attempting to reposition now that primary enemy forces have withdrawn, and most critically, how to navigate the recognition phase without being corrupted by the very success you've been fighting to achieve. The war isn't over, Chosen One, but the phase where you were hunted has ended. The phase where you hunt is about to begin. If you're ready for what comes next, if you recognize yourself in this message, if you feel the truth of these words resonating in your bones, then your next move is critical. This message found you. Now, you must signal that you received it. The universe is watching to see if you recognize the briefing for what it is. Comment, "I am ready," below. Subscribe to receive the next classified transmission. And most importantly, share this message with others who are still waiting in the wilderness, still questioning their timing, still believing they're late. They need to know what you now know. The good news has already arrived. The shift is already happening. The only question is whether you'll move with it or continue doubting until the window closes. The choice, as always, is yours. But understand this message will not find you again. The breach that allowed it through was a one-time authorization. If you dismiss this as coincidence, if you walk away without acknowledging what's been revealed, the next transmission will not reach you. The intelligence network only invests in those who prove they can receive and act on classified information. You've been given the briefing. Now show them you understood it. Your response determines what happens next.